Hello, friends, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, Tuomo, here coming to you live this morning here from Tahiti from my sanctuary here in French Polynesia. And today we are going to be talking about high performance with Fraser Cameron. I'm really excited about this interview for quite a few reasons. I haven't done an interview for a couple of weeks, but one of the other aspects is that Fraser is quite close to me. I haven't had someone from kind of close on the same time zone. So it's very interesting and exciting to introduce Fraser Cameron, Fraser Cameron to our show today, and who is coming to us today from New Zealand. So kind of close to me. How is everything going in New Zealand, Fraser?
Well, I'm here to tell you, Tuomo, that Friday is a good day. We are on Friday, as we know, and like you say, you are just up the road, as we say down here in the Pacific, even though there's lots of ocean between us. It's a beautiful morning. I'm looking forward to an awesome day, and I've been looking forward to chatting to you since we had our first chat earlier in the week, and sharing my views on peak performance and what we can do to enhance it and why we should be doing it to enhance it. So I am really looking forward to this. I had to keep the kids occupied so they didn't come running in and interrupting like they sometimes do during calls. So yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So Fraser, you are a epic performer, a peak performer, high performer, if you will. You've been coaching people about that, how to enhance performance levels. And I think that is also, as I've been following you a little bit, that's also kind of your lifestyle, if you will. That's what you live and breathe as well. So one of the things that I always like to start with is a little bit of your story. Like, how did you end up from where you started to where you are right now? And also kind of along that, if you can sort of define what is performance, or especially high performance, what does it mean to you, and how did you end up into that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, if I flash back about 8.5, 9 years ago now, I was working in the corporate rat race. I was a commercial negotiation consultant. I got paid an exorbitant hourly rate to literally sit in meetings and pretend to be paying attention. Like, it was, when I look back, like seriously, it was a whole bunch of middle-aged men trying to prove how clever they were and trying to be the smartest and trying to be the loudest. And it was just ridiculous, right? And I remember looking out the window and thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be another way. Yes, I enjoyed the relationships that I built and the interactions that I had, but on the whole, I was like, I want to be free. I was looking out the window, had this amazing view, but I was looking out this window going, I want to be out there. I don't want to be in here anymore. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks after that I came home from a long commute, and I walked in the door, and my eldest was barely 2 at the time. My youngest had just been born. And my son looked at me and he said, Dad, why are you always grumpy? Oh, wow. And I didn't realize I was, right? I thought I was happy-go-lucky husband and dad. But his comment made me look long and hard in the mirror, literally and metaphorically. I didn't like what I saw. I'd gained a bit of weight. I had bags under my eyes. I looked tired. I was pale, all these other things, right? And I realized I was also settling for this job I didn't love, this environment I didn't love, missing out on the things I wanted to do. And I went, right, enough is enough. And so I quit my 2 clients at that time without telling my wife until the next day, and said, I'll come in tomorrow to pack up my stuff, and that'll be it, because I can't do this anymore. And best and worst thing I ever did. Best thing, because I was suddenly free. Worst thing, because I didn't know what I was going to do next. Like, I was the only income earner in the family. My wife was a stay-at-home mum, and I was like, what next? And I then realized I'd been coaching, and I'd been a sprinter for 20 odd years myself at this point. And I'd been coaching sprinting and sprint athletes at a pretty high level for about 15 years. And I saw the benefit of them really honing in and focusing on their craft, from them really doing all they could to maximize their performance. And I went, well, that surely applies to life as well, not just elite level sport, but life as well. What if I can help everyday people, non-elite athletes, to provide an elite athlete approach to what they do, to maximize what they do? And so it was really born from there. I started working specifically with dads because it was my journey, and then it slowly broadened out to include people that just wanted more, not more things like more cars or houses or things, but just more impact, more meaning, more freedom. So 8.5 years on, here I am sitting here. We're in New Zealand at the moment because we were living in France, which will be close to your heart when you're in French Polynesia, but COVID sort of made us reevaluate where we wanted to be. And so we decided to come back here, and given the lifestyle those of us in the South Pacific have been living for the last year and a half, it was probably a very, very clever decision in retrospect. But I now get to work with amazing men and women from all around the globe. And so for me, peak performance is about maximizing who we are. It's about doing less but achieving more. I think a lot of people relate peak performance to more, the hustle, the grind, that we got to do more. I've got to go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning and wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And it's the absolute opposite of what peak performance is all about. So it's about being simple and specific in your approach. And it's about maximizing you, really emphasizing the strengths, the greatness, the superpowers you have, whatever your identity may be, and working out how to use that to create the biggest impact that you can, without selling your soul, which is what I was doing in my previous career. And that's so not worth it. So for me, it's about absolutely unlocking all of your potential, breaking through that glass ceiling that sits above so many of us that holds us back, and becoming the best version of you, and going, pushing those boundaries till they stretch and break and you realize that you don't actually have any. So that is what peak performance is to me.
I absolutely love that, because a lot of the times the people that I speak with, and sometimes it creeps up on me as well, like peak performance or this high performance culture or lifestyle, I get sometimes a bit of a bad rap, because people like the other end of it is this like there's a burnout. People talk about the burnout, I'm performing, and like a lot of, either we're thinking about like top athletes, either basketball players or runners like you coaching, or either like high executives like these Elon Musks and all the other people that are kind of outliers, if you will. But how you just brought it out in a way that it's for everyone. It's just getting more out of you. And those feelings that you brought, the fulfillment, the freedom, the clarity, doing less, those are actually, at least to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're kind of the byproducts of this lifestyle that we have. So striving for that little bit of a higher performance, getting more juice out of you, getting more juice out of life, and then as a byproduct, we get those feelings of happiness, freedom, and clarity. And I absolutely, I think we had the call a few days ago, and I remember you telling me that you actually work 2 hours, 3 hours every morning.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. Like, because I've been speaking to people and they're like, oh, it's 2 o'clock in the morning here and I'm still grinding. And I'm like, really? So the way that you put that, I absolutely love that. So let's jump into something that is very close to that. When it comes to this sort of lifestyle, if it's peak performance or elite performance or high performance, if you will, we just touch up on what are obviously the benefits and especially those pitfalls. Obviously, there's the pitfall of kind of the burnout, but what are the other kind of the falls or the little holes that people can fall into?
So for me, burnout is a pitfall when you're not being a peak performer. Burnout is a pitfall when you're working hard rather than necessarily doing the hard work. Right. So there's a real clear distinction there. So for me, the hustle and grind, which you've got to do more, you've got to be doing more than everyone else. You've got to just work long and hard. That's the opposite of peak performance. Right. That to me is trying to make up for the fact that you haven't nailed peak performance by just doing more of the average stuff. So for me, burnout is a sign that you're not quite nailing it. And I think it's because we've been conditioned to think the more work you put in, we wear long hours like a badge of honor on our sleeve. It's like, I work 12-hour days, I work 14-hour days, and it's ridiculous because it's the opposite of peak performance. But one of the pitfalls of peak performance is getting in our own way, right? So we get so focused on what we're doing and we become so narrow-minded, like the horses that wear their blinkers. So sometimes we can't see the other things there. So one thing I noticed with myself is I can become quite ignorant of new ideas and new ways of doing things, right? And so I get so focused on this because I'm delivering at the highest level, and I've refined it down to my 2-hour work days or 45-minute workouts, whatever it is, that you then sometimes don't absorb new stuff. So I think one of the things that we have to do is just open our mind sometimes to, like, whether it be following Wim Hof and doing cold immersion, whether it be doing different forms of meditation, whether it be changing up your workouts, whether it be, whatever it is. I think one of the biggest pitfalls is the ego sometimes takes over, and it's like, no, we've got this. It works for us. We know what we're doing. Let's just keep doing this. And the other big pitfall with peak performance is we often assume what others tell us are the areas that we should focus on, assume that what others tell us is where we are a peak performer, is where we end up focusing. And that often takes us away from our passion. It takes us away from what lights us up. It takes us away from what feels right. And so because we're doing well, because we're succeeding, because we're achieving all these great things, we head on down this path that takes us away from what we want. And that can feel quite empty. And I look at an example of a great peak performer who, dare I say this out loud, isn't particularly talented in comparison to the rest of his field, and that's Tom Brady, right? Yes, he's an amazing athlete, and, well, actually he's probably not, but he's an amazing performer and done really well at the highest level. But he's not as talented as a lot of his things. But what he does is he loves what he does. He doesn't want to stop doing it, and he's really focused and simple with what he does. And I was reading the other day all the new things he's brought on in the last 5 years: change of diet, change of sleeping habit, change of everything else. So he is growing and absorbing all of the way. So he hasn't fallen into the pitfall of going, oh, well, I know this, I'm just going to keep doing the same. LeBron James is another one who's every year changes. Like, he spends $1.5 million, I read somewhere, on his own personal development in terms of what he does in terms of keeping his body in shape. And here he is in his 17th or 18th year in the NBA, and he very rarely has an injury that takes him out for very long, right? He's still performing at the highest level because he's constantly learning new things and applying them to him, working out which one works, then running with it. So I think one of the pitfalls is the ego that comes along with it, and our narrow-mindedness that really limits our further growth.
Right, perfect. I love that. And something that's just coming to my mind right now, because there's obviously what we're talking about is not necessarily for everyone. Like, there's quite a few people that come to me like, hey, I just want to, chill and have my evenings off, and I don't need to do these morning routines or evening routines, and I'm happy where I'm at. So who would you say that this kind of lifestyle is for, and who it is not for?
You just hit it on the head. I'm happy with where I'm at. For me, it's the death knell of growth, of expansion, of impact. So it's certainly not for those that have settled where they are. Now, no judgment on them. It's not for me, and it's not the sort of people I want to work with. But if that's their choice, and there's no judgment whatsoever, where everyone's different and we all want different things. Yeah. But those who have accepted where they are, have settled, and are living in the comfort zone, right? So certainly not for them. Who it is for is the person that wants more. Now, when I talk about more, I'm not talking about the bells and whistles and material things. I'm talking about more freedom, more impact, more meaning, more fun, more laughter, more hilarity, whatever it may be. It's that thing that you're just going, I was born to do something more. I was destined for something bigger and better than this, whatever that may look like, and I want to pursue it. I want to unlock it. I want to discover it. That is who it's for. Now, it may be from a business perspective, it may be relationship, it may be physical performance. Doesn't really matter. Like, I have entrepreneurs, I have elite level athletes, I have executives, like people who want to enhance relationship with their family. Like, it really varies, but the essence is the same. They want more. They're not willing to settle. They want to go out there and do something exceptional, extraordinary.
Love it. So what do you think about, we talked a little bit about those pitfalls, if you will, but when it comes to, like, there's this very relevant term right now called self-care, and we always talk about the self-care. And you mentioned about LeBron James and especially the sport athletes. And for me, when it comes to this elite performance, the self-care or the rest, if you will, the rest and relaxation is possibly even more important than the actual act. Might obviously go hand in hand, but when I heard, and I think it was Usain Bolt said that he sleeps something like 10 hours a day. Like most of the time is being spent on the rest and relaxation. And then those bursts, quote unquote, the performance is kind of short, intense bursts. And then most of the time you're just kind of integrating and resting and letting the body then regenerate and get ready for another burst. And that goes hand in hand with the fact that when we think of peak performance, elite performance, we think that we should be grinding for 12 to 16 hours a day. That is not, that is exactly the opposite, as you said.
Yeah.
So, what would be the, like, how far up you put in importance that sort of rest and relaxation, self-care, and how do you help people to kind of hammer importance of that?
Oh, look, to me, it's right up there. If it's not number one, it's pretty close. And reading an article about LeBron James, who also sleeps 10 hours a day, including naps and everything else. So, you know, it is absolutely critical. And I think this whole 5 a.m. get up in the morning is fantastic if you're going to bed at 8 or 9 o'clock at night. But if you're going to bed at midnight, then you're missing out on so much of the recharge. So I think that self-care, putting yourself first, getting plenty of sleep is absolutely critical. And look, I find when I first start working with people that they're getting 4 or 5 hours sleep, maybe 6 hours sleep. And I used to be the same. I used to go, oh, I'll go to bed at midnight and be up at 6. And, you know, the impact is so cumulative. You know, at the time, you don't notice. It's like when you have a newborn, you don't notice it when they cry and don't sleep for the first week. But then after 4 or 5 weeks, you just realize that you're not functioning at 100% anymore. You're functioning at 80. And then 70 and then 60, you know, and I know you talked about, you know, additions to your family in the last few years, and it's massive. And so I think for me, when I had that epiphany that if I sleep more, I'm going to enhance my recovery. I'm going to increase what my potential is rather than just letting it slowly decrease over time. And so when I changed my habits, started going to bed earlier, my ability to recover from injuries enhanced. My ability to recover from a bad day or a frustrating day enhanced. Everything just got better. So now 8 or 9 hours sleep is a non-negotiable. And I've been known to, I'm looking up there, we've got a beautiful sunroom with a seat overlooking an amazing view. I will nap there most days. And my kids will know when I'm lying on there, generally not to be too loud or interrupt me, and I'll have a half an hour nap. And that to me is key. So when I work with people, I always ask them, how many hours sleep are you getting? You know, and then I go, why don't you try more? And they go, oh, no, I don't have the time for that. And I'm like, just try it for a week and see what it does. And sure enough, oh, I'm more efficient. I'm more productive when I sleep more. I've got more energy. I'm excited. And you're like, there you go. It's sleep's free. It's simple to put in there. And it's the best performance enhancer we have. Everything's better when you've had more sleep. So I think if you can structure your day around ensuring you get that good quality sleep, getting rid of technology a couple of hours before you go to bed, you know, having it dark, having it cool, whatever, bigger challenge for you where you live, but in terms of the heat, but just finding that environment where it's very restful and calm, which is why I love living in the country, because it's quiet, right? Except for the odd bird sound and things. But that to me is a non-negotiable, because those who miss out on sleep, you can handle it for a short time, but it eventually has a massive impact. And LeBron James himself has credited 10 hours sleep to why he's still able to perform at the top level. And Usain Bolt, sprinters are notoriously inherently lazy and will find every opportunity to sleep. And he's famous for doing that, for having a nap on the track just before a training session. And it's like, because he knows that will make what he does better. And it's an easy habit, simple habit to create. And I think it's one that everyone should be doing. And 8 or 9 hours sleep really should become a non-negotiable as often as you can, bearing in mind that, you know, kids will often wake up in the middle of the night or there's noise or whatever else. But if you can be nailing that 80 to 90% of the time, you will drastically enhance your performance in all that you do, in all areas. It's amazing what it does.
Your focus, or all of a sudden your focus becomes very, very streamlined. You're able to instead of taking a task for 45 minutes, you might do it in 20 minutes, or like your half a day shrinks into 3 hours or 2 hours, whatever it is that you're doing. So the performance like it just goes straight through the roof.
And the irony is that people, the excuse for not sleeping more is they don't have the time. And you've just explained why you should make the time, because it creates time. If it then takes you half as long to do something, you will get that time back with interest just by sleeping more. So you're absolutely right.
I love that. I love that. So let's go straight into, like, that's a good bridge to what does your sort of morning and evening look like, and like you mentioned a little bit about those evening habits there, but I think those, especially when it comes to evening, especially when it comes to morning, those are kind of the transition times, if you will.
Yep.
Transitioning from day to night. Also, we have those little transition periods during the day when you're coming from work to home, or from you go from home to work. Those are the like little sort of transition routines and rituals that I always like to help people with implement. So what does your sort of quote unquote normal day look like, especially when it comes to morning and evening?
Yeah, so look, I'm the first one to wake up in the house. The birds wake me up. So I generally have half an hour to 45 minutes before anyone else is awake. So it varies depending on what time of the year it is and when the sun's rising, but it's usually just before sunrise. And I haven't used an alarm for 8 years. So it's just the body wakes up when it's ready. So I generally will then come down here to the office, which is separate from the main house. I'll sit on a beanbag and I'll do 10 to 15 minutes of meditation. So start off with my meditation. Then when that finishes, just sit here, gather my thoughts, get excited by what's lying ahead, pop upstairs. Usually there's a bit of buzz going on in the house, then make my morning espresso, sit there, chat to the family, have that, go and get ready for work, which involves t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops, which I'm sure it does for you too. I will then come down, do my calls, do a little bit of things like that, and then close the laptop down and go outside and do something fun with the kids. It's that separation between work and play. So we'll kick the ball around, we'll do some play hide and seek. They play go home, stay home, which makes me run around the whole house. We've got a hectare here, so there's plenty of room to run around and just do something fun like that. And then in the afternoon spent at the beach or relaxing with family or doing things like that, giving my wife a bit of a spell with the two crazies. And then the evening really is about stopping technology relatively early. About 6 or 7 years ago, I fell in love with reading again, right? So during university, you have to read 1 million books. So you very quickly forget to love reading because you're reading to consume masses of materials. But I decided to get into fiction again because non-fiction was overwhelming me, because whenever I read non-fiction at night, especially self-help books, I'd get an idea and my mind would be racing. So fiction is such a massive way of me switching off. So I will read for an hour of fiction in the nice quiet room with decent light that isn't blue light, that's dull light, but enough for me to read and completely escape. I probably read about 8 or 9 novels a month, just the reading. And then I'll just go and lie on the couch out in the lounge and just center myself, almost do a quick refresh of the meditation, and then off to bed. So it is really, and we live out in nature, so it's really important for me to center myself every day. So whether it's a swim in the ocean or just standing with my feet on the bare earth or the sand and just really center myself. Those are important habits that I've tried to make part of my everyday life. And most days turn out to have a similar beginning and end, which I think I used to hate routine too. I really tried to avoid routine as much as I could. But then when I saw the benefits of those simple habits and the routine they create, now I don't feel as though my day started until I've done my meditation. And I don't feel as though my day's ended until I've had my relax, refresh of that meditation. So it's an amazing impact these habits can have on giving you the best chance of being a peak performer every day.
100%. Something that I learned from a dear friend of mine, Marek Kamiński, who is this polar explorer. He was here at our house, and I was able to spend time with him. And what he said always stuck with me. He said that the freedom is not the enemy of the discipline. Oh, sorry, the discipline is not the enemy of the freedom. Because a lot of the times we think like we have these routines and habits, and that steals our freedom, but it's actually the other way around. Once we have a little bit of a framework, then within that frame or outside of the frame, that's where the freedom is. Because once you have a little bit of a framework, and a frame, you can actually paint the picture as you wish inside. If you don't have any kind of boundaries, routines, rituals, you just lost at sea. So you gotta have, at least to me, it really helps. You gotta have the road where you're driving on.
I think, look, that's why I battled against it for so long, because for me, it was the antithesis of freedom. You know, when you have those routines and habits, it's actually the opposite of freedom, but it's so not. You're absolutely right. And your friend nailed it, because it's that discipline that creates the freedom. It creates the opportunity. It ensures that you're doing the best that you can as often as you can. And they can be simple little triggers. It doesn't need to be a 4-hour routine at night and a 4-hour routine in the morning. Like, it really can be really simple. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, the more efficient you become, the less time that it takes as well. But I think the opportunity and creating the time to just stop and reflect at either end of the day is golden.
Perfect. So those are the habits. Let's get into sort of like more of a how we can start crafting this kind of peak performance lifestyle, if you will, or epic performance, to be able to get more juice out of us, to be able to live to our fullest. What do you see as like fundamentals, if you will, fundamental elements, attributes to be able to have this kind of...
So look, I have a thing that I call the peak performance formula. And for me, that is the foundation of it all. So for me, the peak performance formula is purpose plus identity plus passion equals value. When we identify our non-ego driven purpose, so for those people that have family as their purpose, I argue it's not a good purpose. It's a good mission to have sitting underneath the purpose, but the purpose needs to be an outcome, and it needs to not be about you and what you do. And then your identity, knowing exactly who you are, where your greatness lies, where your strengths lie, knowing that. Your passion or passions, the things that you love doing, the things that excite you, and then throwing those all into a big melting pot, stirring it around, and then what comes out is your value. And that's the things that you do to help achieve the purpose. That's the things that you do to impact others. And when we're clear on that, that's when we get rid of all the fluff. That's when we get rid of what is typically for most people, 75% of how we spend our time is completely unnecessary and taking us away from what we want to be doing, and away from our value, and away from our passion, and away from our identity. When we strip that away and really focus on our value, then we attract other people to us to help plug the gaps where we don't have value and they do, and that's fantastic. But that's when we start to get really simple and specific with our focus, strip away all of the unnecessary, and then you realize that you have all this time available to you that you can use for surfing, for climbing mountains, for going in rivers, for relaxing with family, for self-care, all of those things that you didn't have time for before. You suddenly realize you have an abundance of time when you become very value-driven with the value that you have. And being clear on that is key. That clarity is what holds most people back from never becoming peak performers. Those people that do achieve peak performance have that crystal clear clarity of why, what, when, and how, and who.
I absolutely love that. So it's basically you start quite deep down on the internal work.
Absolutely.
A lot of people, when we think about high performers, we think of all these achievements and early mornings, late nights, grinding, crafting, like lifting lots of weights. But you just nailed it right there, that it actually starts from the internal work. Like the clarity, focus is, to me, is one of the main elements that I always like to work on myself and all the people that I help out with. Like, you have that clarity of the focus, because then a lot of the other things that we don't need to do becomes kind of easy to say no to.
They become superfluous, and we can strip them away. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So once we come from the internal world, and obviously the mind is very kind of interesting space to be. And a lot of the times our mind wants to take us to the left, and then our body or our old habits wants to take us to the right, if you will. What would be your ideas how to align your mind and body, if you will? Because a lot of the times those are kind of, there's a misalignment, if you will. And especially when it comes to performance, when we want to achieve higher, we want to perform better, I think the mind and body needs to be aligned. Your mind needs to agree with your body what you do.
Look, I'm a great believer that I think mindset has become overrated. And let me explain what I mean. I think mindset's fundamentally important, but I think a lot of people stop at the mindset. They go, oh, but I've got a positive mindset and I know what I'm doing, but then they don't follow it up with the action. They don't follow it up with the physical actions that they have to do every day. So I think people have focused so much on having this amazing mindset and it stops there. And then you have other people that are great with action, but don't really know why they're taking that action or what the purpose of that action is. And so they're the ones that end up hustling and grinding because they're just doing more action. So I think combining the two is fundamental. And again, the peak performance formula, when it talks about your purpose and your identity and your value. So it's understanding what you should be doing and why, and what your role in that is, and then executing it. And I think for me, I used to get up, and I've always been a pretty energetic person, right? So I get up full of energy, but sometimes I'd have down days and go, I can't really be bothered today. Unlocking a purpose that wasn't about me made me realize that there's more intrinsic motivation for getting up and doing stuff today, for getting that action in place. And I was chatting to a guy at my gym. He's a personal trainer. He's building a business, and I was helping him out just with him setting a purpose that wasn't about him. And he said to me the other day, he said, oh, since you and I did that work before Christmas, every day I've woken up full of energy, excited by what lies ahead. And he said, my family are a little bit sick of it because I've got too much energy. And he was saying it tongue in cheek, right? But he goes, that was such a simple change. Whereas he said, before I was getting up because it was about me. Now I'm getting up because it's about this bigger purpose that I'm in pursuit of achieving. And I'm like, there you go. That's the difference. Like I used to struggle maintaining a healthy diet, maintaining eating healthy. I'd be good for 3 or 4 weeks and then go off the rails for a week or two. I'd be bad at maintaining healthy physical habits. I'd be good for 3 or 4 weeks, then go off the rails and, make excuses for myself. Since really having that bigger picture in place, I don't go off the rails anymore. Every now and then, I'll have a bit of a blowout and eat some food I shouldn't and have a few days off exercise, but it's very, very short-lived. And the impact's minimal. And I think really having understanding of your purpose and who you are and where your value lies means that you can align the physical and mental and emotional and soul and heart and all the other layers that come into it and go, right, so this is where we are heading. This is what this part of me has to do, and this is what this part of me has to do. And if they're not in sync, then it's going to be like that. Yeah. So you then realize that you're wasting your energy if you do that, and it's not worth it. So you then start to build that collective and a holistic approach to it. And I have learned more about myself mentally and emotionally in the last 8 years than I have physically. And I think that is, you realize that you are physically capable of so much more than you ever knew once you've got the mental and emotional side sorted. And you talk to elite level athletes. I have the joy of working with some very elite level athletes, and they go, oh, I never think I'm physically not capable of that. And it's such a different mindset. They're like, oh yeah, no, I'll just, for me it's a matter of now I've got to work out a way of how I get there. And I'm like, wow, if everyone thought like that, imagine what we could achieve as individuals if we just go, oh yeah, no, that's possible, I just need to work out what to do to get there. And it's that different mindset of not I can't do it, but what do I have to do to get there? Yeah. How can I get there? How can I bring people to help me? What can I do to make it easier? Oh, that thing that I'm doing every day isn't helping me get there, so I need to stop doing that, which will give me more time to do more of this that is getting me there. So simple when you hear it, but not many people apply it.
Yeah, I love that. So let's start slowly wrapping this up. I got a couple more questions for you. And by the way, the if you're watching this right now live with us or in the replay, please do leave us a comment, leave your questions below if you have something for Fraser. I'm sure he will be happy to answer your questions. Absolutely. But the last one here for you, what do you like? You mentioned that purpose already, and I think that's super, super powerful. Knowing your why, knowing your purpose, knowing why we get up and why we do what we do, and especially that contribution. What would be your other ideas or tips, tools, if you will? What to do on those rainy days? What to do when you wake up and you just don't feel it, or when it's raining outside, or you hit a slump? Like we all get off the rails, like you said. I think it's more a question of when instead of if. So to have those kind of ideas in place and tools in place to how to get back on rail, because a lot of people, they like to stay on track and they like to focus on staying on the track. And for me, it's always like, okay, let's have those habits and routines in place to kind of safeguard those, like how we get back on track. But how would you help someone on a rainy day, if you will, on like emotionally rainy day?
Yeah. So, look, I have something that I call the happiness tool. I read an amazing book by a Harvard professor called Sean Aker called The Happiness Advantage. And I must have read it 7 or 8 years ago. And in there, he talks about the pursuit of happiness being ridiculous. Happiness isn't something we pursue. It's something we create. It's ours, and we choose to create it. So I sort of took this further and thought about how I could apply it to my clients. And I realized that whenever I had a slump and I'd go, oh, I'm over this or I'm frustrated, when I went for a walk on the beach and listened to my favorite sounds, I'd come back after 20 minutes full of ideas, full of energy, full of solutions, full of everything else. The same would happen when I'd watch my favorite clip of Derek Redmond, the 400-meter runner from the UK in the late 80s and early 90s, who pulled his hamstring in the Olympics, and his dad came down and helped him over the line. And it fills me with joy that, that someone's achieving something despite the obstacles. So I realized that if we simply create happiness when we're feeling down, the following 20 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, we're bulletproof. We're in the zone, right? Because that happiness fuels that. Happiness creates success. So for me, if I'm feeling down, I'll go and have an espresso on the deck with my wife or playing with the kids. I'll play a board game with the kids, kick the ball around with the kids. I'll go and watch my favorite YouTube clip for 5 minutes, listen to my favorite songs, go and stand in nature, go and do something really simple. And so my clients, they have a list of 8 to 10 things that they can do. And they also have a list of trouble that they know is going to come up, barriers that they have, obstacles that they have. And when that comes up, they know the triggers because the triggers are listed. What do I do when that trigger comes up? Go and apply a happiness tool. And sure enough, that just like that, you get out of it. So it might be reading a passage in a book. It might be watching an inspirational video. Like, there's about 1 million things it can be. The only limits are make it accessible so there's no excuse not to do it instantly, and make it short and sharp. And you then end up incorporating them into your daily habits. Like meditation was one that was, after meditation, I'd be happy and I'd be problem solving. Oh, Fraser, so why don't you include that in your daily routine so it's not something you only have to use when you get like that? So I can now say that when I started my list of barriers and obstacles, I had about 20. I can honestly say I now have 3. And I'll never get rid of those 3, but I've got triggers to know when they're coming, and I've got tools to deal with them so they don't take me off the rails. And if they do, I slightly trip and then I stand back up again and I'm off, right? But the other 20 odd have disappeared because I've incorporated these happiness tools into my daily routine, and so they don't even come up. So I think it's that continuous improvement, and happiness is such an amazing tool, because when we're happy, nothing's in our way. Well, anything's possible when you're happy, when you're energized. So it's like, how can you create that at the drop of a hat? And so it can be used to overcome the clouds that come in our mind and in our, metaphorically come in and slow us down. So happiness is an amazing tool, and learning how to simply apply it at the drop of a hat changes the game.
I absolutely love that, Fraser. That is such a cool, that's my takeaway right there, using and applying and coming up with happiness tools. Yeah, I absolutely love that. Because for me, one of my my TEDx talk was, I create a lifestyle where happiness is a byproduct. And a lot of the times when we're in those slumps, we're trying to battle the emotions like right there and then without doing anything. And you just mentioned, like, get out of your seat, get out and moving.
Yes.
Like, once we
Stop
move
whatever
our
you're doing,
body, like, apply some movement or momentum, if you will, and have those tools in place to because it's very hard when those emotional clouds are coming over us to try to, like, emotionally try to combat those, like, apply some movement and momentum. And I think that's the key. Absolutely love this conversation, Fraser. Thank you so much for dropping by and spending this time. Where can people find you? Where are you most active online, and how can we approach you?
I have a website, which is www.frasercameron.com. But the place that I'm most active, and you and I know this because it's where we met, is on LinkedIn. I post 2 or 3 times a day, very active on there. It's where I share most of my content. So it's probably the best place to come and look at. And on there in my featured section, I have 5 quick ways that people can kickstart their journey to peak performance. And it's something that they can take away. It's a very short only because I have a short attention span, 5-page PDF that people can read and apply straight away. Sleep is actually one of them, but it's worthwhile people having a look at that. So just go and have a look at it. It's on the featured page and apply it. But LinkedIn is the best place, and always welcome to accept new connections, as I did with you not that long ago, and look where that led. So please come and connect with me there and ask any questions that you have. Very open to answer anything like that.
Love it. I absolutely love this conversation, Fraser, because it really opened up for me and hopefully for the people listening what peak performance is, what it is not, and how can we start that journey. Especially the start is the internal one. Like that's where it starts becoming clear, finding that clarity, finding that focus. And a lot of people, hopefully after this conversation, feel and think and differently about the high performance culture, if you will. It is actually for most of us, and how can we get more juice and more energy out of our days and our lives. Thank you so much, Fraser, and I look forward to following your journey further.
Thank you so much for having me on your amazing show. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing where we can continue to collaborate to help more and more people to realize that peak performance is doing less and achieving more and having a whole lot of fun along the way.
Wow, that's a beautiful wrap up right there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.